Hey y'all, I'm CQ and this is Spirit Gumbo, the podcast where we stir the spiritual pot with truth, spice, and sass. In today's episode, we're tackling something we all resist, letting go, even when every fiber of our being says hold on tight. We'll start with a gumbo bite on the emotional resistance behind letting go. Then I'll share the breakthrough that turned my own resistance into release. After that, we'll pull a tarot truth bomb to see what Spirit says about surrender, and I've got a spirit side eye coming for all that spiritual bypassing nonsense. So grab your candle, sip your tea, and let's get into it. This ain't just talk. This is Spirit Gumbo with CQ. All right, now here's your gumbo bite for today. Something short and spicy to stir into your soul. Why does letting go feel so impossible? One reason is because our minds confuse release with loss. When we let go of people, places, or situations, we fear the emptiness that might follow. But that space, it's where new blessings find us. What you release gets replaced with what's truly meant for you. Another reason is fear of change. We get comfortable, even in chaos, because discomfort feels safer than the unknown. We stay stuck because we know the pain and the unfamiliar feels like a bigger risk. And then there's the fear of failure. Letting go can feel like giving up, like admitting defeat, but it's not. It's choosing peace over struggle. And that's not weakness, it's wisdom. But here's the twist. That tight grip you're clinging with, it's what's keeping you stuck. The only way forward is to open your hand. So ask yourself, what am I really afraid to lose? Security, identity, love? How is holding on serving me? Comfort zone, familiar pain? What space am I making for new blessings? Room for growth? New relationships? Jot down your answers. That's your roadmap to release. One honest prompt at a time. Letting go isn't about losing yourself. It's about creating space for who you're becoming. Now, take that with you and stir wisely. And now, it's story time with CQ, mourning the life that slipped away. In episode 1, I briefly mentioned taking care of my first husband. For a little background, he was a childhood diabetic who, when I met him, was taking 2 shots a day to keep his sugars balanced. He was what was referred to when I first met him as a severe diabetic. He had extremely high highs, extremely low lows. He was also what is known as a mood diabetic. His diabetes greatly affected his moods. Really high could cause him to be angry. Really low could cause him to be hangry. Just his diabetes was already to a point of being severe. When we got married, I was 20 years old and I didn't plan for or even realize how fast things could change. By the time that I was 32, his kidneys had failed. At the time, we had a 3-month-old baby and a 7-year-old child. I went from being a wife and mother to being a full-time caregiver literally overnight. I still remember receiving that phone call because he was at work when his kidneys failed and he collapsed. I had to find someone to watch the kids so I could rush to the hospital to figure out what was going on. It's a phone call nobody should have to receive. He lived on dialysis from 2005 until he passed in March of 2016. That's over a decade. Most people on dialysis don't see the decade mark, but he did. And when he got sick, I made a promise to him and to myself that I'd take care of him until the end. I held on to that promise like it was my lifeline. like it defined me. I made that promise with my whole heart because I believed in it. Others had walked out on him before, left because he was sick. I wasn't going to be one of them. And truthfully, I didn't have a father in my life. I know what that absence feels like. I didn't want my children to grow up with that same wound. I was also raised to believe that you don't abandon people when they become sick. You show up, you stay, you love them through it. So I did. I stayed for as long as I could. I gave everything I had until there was nothing left to give without losing myself or my children in the process. And I tried. Spirit knows I tried to keep it. But life doesn't always honor the promises we make. The final few years were the hardest. Caregiving wasn't just a part of my life, it was my life. Medical routines dictated our days, doctor's appointments, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning 3 times a week to bring him to dialysis, and then having to pick him back up, trying to keep him well enough to spend time with the kids even though he was exhausted from treatments, taking care of the kids, getting them to school and to daycare, and then came the emergencies, the late night ambulance rides, ER visits, hospital stays. And I'm not just talking hospital stays where he was there for a day or two. This is hospital stays where he was there for weeks, having to balance taking care of my children and running to the hospital, spending days waiting to talk to doctors. I can't count how many times I held my breath in a waiting room or had to explain to my children why their daddy was in the hospital again. It became normal, even routine, but it was never okay. When you have diabetes and your kidneys fail, you can get on the transplant list for both kidneys and a pancreas. However, it literally took us years to get on that waiting list. And it finally looked like our prayers were answered when he got on the list. He was actually put at the top because of how long it took us to get to that point. And we got 3 chances, 3 calls. The first call, he wasn't a perfect match. And we sat at the transplant center for hours waiting to find out that he wasn't a match. When the second call came in, I honestly don't remember why he wasn't a match for that one. But the third call was the one that hurt the most. I had to call the ambulance because he was having chest pains. The ambulance got there. They loaded him up. They headed off to the hospital. And just as I was walking out the door, the phone rang and I answered. It was the transplant center. They had another match, and I had to tell them that he was on the way to the hospital with a possible heart attack. And that was it. That was the end of the line for the transplant. Once you start having heart attacks and your heart's not strong enough to go through the hours-long surgery that it takes for a transplant, you're no longer on the list. I'll be honest, this is the condensed Disney version of the things that we were struggling through and living through. My children and I were in a constant state of grief even before saying goodbye. There was no room to breathe. Our home felt like a ward, and Joy was just a rare visitor. And one day, I got to a place where I had to face the truth I never wanted to admit. We couldn't live like this anymore. I wasn't just his caregiver. I was their mother. And I couldn't let my children grow up learning to bury their joy or their childhood to keep someone else alive emotionally, physically, and spiritually. I'd love to say that I kept my promise. I would love to sit here and say that I was some paragon of strength and virtue and that I kept my promise, but I didn't, and it broke me to let it go. In May of 2015, we, and I mean we, made the decision to divorce. It wasn't just me walking away. We had an honest conversation. We chose what was best for him, for me, for the kids. It was one of the hardest decisions of my life, but I don't regret it. Letting go of that promise felt like letting go of a part of myself, but it also made room for all of us to grieve and to start our healing. If you remember in episode 1, how I found my voice as CQ, I had started DJing in 2011. So around the time that was the hardest for me to deal with his sickness and trying to manage everything, something unexpected began to stir in me, something I hadn't felt in years. At first, it was just an outlet, a chance to feel alive again, to feel music in my body, to remember I existed beyond the roles I was carrying. But the more I played, the more I DJ'd, the more I felt her returning, my voice, my fire, my joy. It was the beginning of a reawakening. I didn't know it then, but I was slowly reclaiming pieces of myself that had been buried under duty and grief. That was the seed of what you heard back in episode 1. The moment I started finding my voice as CQ, that voice was forged in fire, shaped by caregiving, grief, love, and hard decisions. But it was mine. And once it came back, I knew I couldn't go back to silence. The one thing it taught me is letting go isn't giving up. It's acknowledging that the season has changed, and so have we. Now that I've shared my story with you, let's dig into the pot and really stir the mechanics of release, one ingredient at a time. Why do we cling so tightly to the things, people, places, and situations we know we need to release? Let's start with fear of the unknown. I think this is something we all struggle with. Even when we recognize that a situation is toxic, draining, or just no longer aligned, it still feels more comfortable than the unknown. Because what's familiar, even when it hurts, feels safer than stepping into the uncertainty. Letting go can mean big changes, and change is scary. It's vulnerable. It shakes our sense of control. Next up, identity ties. This one's deep. Just like I was talking about being and identifying with a lifeline of a promise, we often define ourselves by the roles we play, the hats we wear: wife, husband, parent, friend, healer, employee, business owner. These roles become extensions of our identity. So when we think about releasing a relationship, a job, or even a way of being, it can feel like we're losing ourselves. That fear isn't just about change. It's about who we'll be without that title. And finally, there's the never give up script. Culturally, we've been taught that quitting equals failure, that giving up means we are the failure. We're told to push through, to tough it out, to keep trying, even when something clearly isn't working. How many times have you been told to just put on your big boy or big girl pants and get it done? And when we release something that doesn't serve us, that script kicks in. Am I giving up? Am I weak? But hear me loud and clear. Releasing what no longer serves your highest good is not failure. It's wisdom. It's self-respect. It's you making room for something better, something aligned, something you deserve. So, if you've been clinging, maybe it's time to ask, what am I really afraid of? And what am I making space for when I finally open my hand? How do we begin to let go? We start by naming what it is we're attached to. And I'll be honest, this can be one of the hardest parts. But naming it, that means you're already halfway there. In my last episode, I shared how being a lifelong people pleaser made it hard for me to set boundaries. Underneath, that was a deep fear of not being enough. That people pleasing came with a side dish of fixer energy. I felt responsible for making sure everyone around me was happy, that if they were upset, I had somehow failed. But through my own healing, and let me tell you, Spirit did not let me avoid this, I've had to recognize it's not my job to make other people happy. It's not my job to fix everything. And when I started letting go of that fixer identity, I began to see how often I was absorbing emotions that weren't even mine. And now I can recognize someone else's feelings without making them my own. It's not about me. It's about them. One of my favorite sayings now, not my monkeys and not my circus. So take a moment now, take a deep breath, and really think about what you're attached to. What's the identity, belief, relationship, role, or story you've been gripping onto so tightly because you thought it defined you? Once you've named the attachment, give yourself space to feel it before you release it. Here's what I want you to do. Set a timer for 3 to 5 minutes, whatever feels doable for you, and let yourself feel grief, rage, shame, sadness. Whatever comes up, let it move through you. Now, I know that this isn't easy. Many of us were taught to avoid our emotions, to tuck them away like they're too much, but you can't truly release what you haven't allowed yourself to feel. So, take those minutes, let the emotion rise, speak, and settle. That's how healing begins. And when you're ready, write it down. Write down what you're releasing and how it made you feel. Maybe it's a few raw sentences. Maybe it's 3 messy pages. However it flows, there's no wrong way. Now, take that paper and burn it, bury it, tear it up into a million little pieces. Whatever feels sacred, final, and true to you. And as you do, imagine Spirit receiving every word in love and light, and then release it to Spirit. Let it be covered in white light and let it go. This isn't woo-woo magic. It's moving energy. When you feel it, you can free it. So how do you integrate the lessons? First, we reframe the void as creative potential. When we release people, places, things, or situations, what's left behind can feel empty, like a void. That emptiness can be frightening and disorienting, simply because it's unfamiliar. One trap we don't want to fall into is trying to fill the void with addictions. And I don't just mean the numbing kind like alcohol or drugs. Anything can become an addiction. TV, video games, shopping, when we use it to escape rather than to feel. It's not about judging the habit. It's about asking, is this truly serving my highest good? Reframing this void as creative potential means shifting the perspective. Instead of seeing the emptiness as loss, you see it as space to create something new. Spiritually, the void is fertile ground, like dark soil where seeds are planted, or the dark moon phase where new intentions are born. It's not about rushing in to fill the space. It's about allowing your true self, aligned opportunities, and creative energy to rise in that open expanse. And finally, let's talk about daily micro lettings. Let's be honest here. We don't change everything overnight. We're not going to fix this in a day. What we can do is work minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. Letting go doesn't have to be one big dramatic release. Sometimes it's more sustainable and more powerful when we do it in small, intentional steps, what I like to call micro-lettings. Daily micro-lettings could look like releasing a negative thought when it comes up. It takes 3 positive thoughts to replace 1 negative. So it helps to have a few ready. I am ready to let go. Letting go makes room for the people, places, and things meant for me. I embrace letting go and letting things flow. I encourage you to use these or come up with your own. Taking a break from people, places, or things that trigger you. I'm not saying disconnect from the world forever, just for a weekend. Shut off the phone, go outside, reconnect with nature. Give yourself that space to release, reground, and breathe. If you do this over a weekend, it's easier to come back feeling refreshed and more like yourself. Letting go of the always be productive mindset. You don't have to earn your rest. Hydrate, breathe, be still. Self-care is recognizing when you need to do nothing. There's a saying that when we do nothing, everything gets accomplished. We don't always have to be productive. We don't always have to be doing something. This is one of those lessons that I actually really need to learn. Clearing physical clutter. A cluttered space leads to a cluttered mind. Do some light cleaning. And I mean light. I'm not talking about a deep clean for spring. I'm talking about a light cleaning. Tidy up your space. Smudge with herbs or light incense. This clears energetic residue as well. Saying no to one thing that drains you and meaning it. Just one thing. That's enough for today. Think of this as energetic tidying, done bit by bit each day. These small acts of release add up over time, and they send a clear message to spirit. I'm ready. I'm letting go. I'm open for aligned transformation. And then embrace the afterglow. After you let go of something, whether big or small, there's a sacred moment where something settles inside you. That's the afterglow. Embracing the afterglow is about honoring the space you've made, listening for insights or energetic shifts, journaling your feelings, messages, or intuitive downloads after a release, and noticing what feels different in your body, mind, or emotions. This is the integration phase where healing becomes embodied and wisdom begins to crystallize. Ignoring it is like blowing out a candle without noticing the warmth it left behind. So here's some journaling prompts to keep in mind. What shifted in me after I let go? What am I learning about myself in the space that opened up? Now that you've got the mechanics, the why, the how, and what to look for when you're releasing, let's see what Spirit has to say about what opens up when you finally let go. It's time for a Tarot Truth Bomb. It's time for a Tarot Truth Bomb, where Spirit speaks through the cards and I don't sugarcoat the message. Today's pull is all about release. So as I shuffle, I want you to take a deep breath and ask yourself, what's waiting for me on the other side of letting go? What gift, what freedom, what healing becomes possible when I finally loosen my grip? I have decided I'm saying this as I'm shuffling cards. I have decided that as far as the Tarot Truth Drop is concerned, this is going to be the rawest segment. I am not going to change too much for the Tarot Truth Bombs because I read how I read. And if you ever have a reading with me, I say a lot of ums and I think and I look off in the distance, and it's just because I am trying to hear what Spirit has to say. So I am going to start leaving the Tarot Truth Bombs more raw versus the rest of the episode. So as I finish shuffling, let's see what card we have. So the card we've pulled is the Magician card. And as we look at the Magician card from a standpoint of what's waiting for me on the other side of letting go, the Magician has everything that is needed to move forward. If you've ever seen a Magician card, he has control over wands, pentacles, swords, and cups. So all elements are at his divine fingertips. And a lot of times he is just waiting for a lightning strike to be able to make a move. So if we would describe that lightning strike as us finally taking the steps of letting go, what's on the other side of that is everything that we need to move forward, right? I'm actually hearing one of the things that I keep in mind when I'm trying to move through something is that everything that you want is on the other side of fear. And it's the truth. When we can let go, everything that we want is on the other side. So right now, Spirit's saying you have everything that you need. It's just time to let go. The other thing that I'm hearing is fear stands for one of two things: face everything and rise, or face everything and run. And I'm the type of person that wants to face everything and rise. So today, take the steps to start rising into your own power, standing where you need to stand, and start letting go of the things that are no longer serving your highest good. Because not only are you supported by people, places, and things that want to support you, but you're also supported by Spirit. Spirit said what it said. Spirit didn't stutter. Take it in, sit with it, and do what you will with it. Even I truly get surprised sometimes with the way that Spirit works and the way that Spirit hands us synchronicities and messages. I was not expecting the Magician to come out with that pull. I really wasn't. So now that we've got our tarot truth drop done, we're going to go ahead and move into our Spirit side eye for the day. All right, now it's time for a Spirit side eye, because some of y'all out here playing with energy like karma won't slap you in the back of the head. Spirit side eye to the spiritual bypassers who slap a smile on pain and call it growth. Healing isn't unicorns and rainbows on a highlight reel for social media. It's messy, raw, sacred. It's real work. Real healing means sitting in the ache, screaming into the pillow, and holding space for the parts of yourself you've been taught to silence. Every tear, every rage, every sigh, they are rites of passage, not setbacks. There's no shortcut through the soul, and sometimes you gotta walk through fire to get to the other side. That was your Spirit side eye. Now go on and sage your space, center your spirit, and mind your magical business. Let me leave you with this. Letting go isn't weakness. It's courage in its rawest form. It's choosing to trust Spirit even when your heart is still breaking. Every time you release what no longer serves your highest good, you're making room and making space for something sacred to rise. It's not always graceful. Sometimes release is ugly crying, rage journaling, screaming into the void, face planting into the ground and rolling around in the grass to get grounded. And that's okay. On the other side of that mess is clarity. On the other side is freedom. So breathe, unclench your fists and jaw, and let Spirit stir the rest. That's it for today's brew. If something stirred your soul, pass it on. And don't forget to follow, rate, and share your thoughts on any of our socials. Next week in episode 4, It's Not a Gift, It's an Ability, Let's Break the Myth, we're busting open the belief that only special people can connect with Spirit. Spoiler alert, intuition isn't exclusive. It's already in you. Let's talk about how to reclaim it. Until next time, this ain't just talk. This is Spirit Gumbo with CQ.